As I talked about in the Survivor Series 1991 review, you could start to see where the cracks were forming in the foundation of both the WWF at the time and the wrestling business as a whole. And I think you really start to see it in 1992. The previous generation is slowly but surely starting to fall by the wayside in the WWF's case. You have no more Andre the Giant. The Ultimate Warrior is now gone, which changed some of the card. There were other guys that were supposed to be a part of this show that ended up not being. So, there's a time of transition for the business in general. And in a way, this was a time where you started to see what the future could look like in some ways, but the future wasn't here yet. And when you look at Survivor Series 1992, it's honestly one of those shows that I think the WWF at the time, excuse me, they kind of got carried away with things. And what I mean is, it got away. This was the first real show, whereas in 91, you just had Taker versus Hogan for the belt, and that was the only singles match. It was still a Survivor Series show. This one here was a couple of tag matches, one kind of traditional tag, several singles matches, and it just doesn't really feel like a Survivor Series. And this was that first show that really truly didn't at least feel like a Survivor Series. And this show had its bad elements. I mean, there was parts of this show that are largely doo-doo. I can pretty much tell you there are only two matches that are worth watching on this entire pay-per-view. Like Head Shrinkers versus High Energy. It's kind of fun to go back and watch these guys, but the match wasn't anything worth watching. You could definitely skip it. It's a run-of-the-mill tag match on Raw, pretty much. For some reason, somebody decided to give Nails a fucking push. I've never understood what the whole concept was behind Nails and why they thought that this guy had it and they were going to put the machine behind him and try to make him a big gimmicky type of fucking star, knowing they pretty much only had one thing to do, and that was feud him with the Big Bossman. Here's the former inmate. We call him Nails. We're going to send him at the Big Bossman, and it's Survivor Series. We're going to have a nightstick on a pole match. Oh, God. This is brutal. Nails was brutal. The only thing more brutal was the right hook he gave Vince. He punched his lights out. He said, "Fuck you, boom!" And in that way, Nails is a bit of an admirable character. But as a character, as a performer, he was doo-doo. And this match was purely doo-doo. Lord rest his soul, I feel terrible for the Big Boss Man that he ever got involved in this shit with fucking Nails. Period. Tatanka versus Rick Martel again. You see matches like this on Raw all the time. Nothing special to see. Yokozuna versus Virgil is definitely skippable, but at least I will say this, at this time, you're trying to get Yoko ready. And you're trying to get him ready quickly. You're probably already have planned out by now that he's going to win the Rumble. You're probably in some way going to have him win the belt come WrestleMania time in somehow, some way. So you got to put him over somebody. Do it against Virgil. You don't care about Virgil. Gives Yoko a big win at a big pay-per-view, or at least a win at a big pay-per-view, I should say. So it served its purpose, but definitely not worth watching. I mean, you look at the 4-on-4 Survivor Series match, the kind of traditional match. You got the Nasty Boys and Natural Disasters versus Money Inc. and the Beverly Brothers. Still an okay tag division at that time, but not the same tag division we had seen in previous years during this Hogan era. Another thing that this show really missed was Hogan. I mean, if you really think about it, there's no Andre, there's no Ultimate Warrior, there's no Hogan, Jake the Snake Roberts is gone, Rick Rude, JYD, they're long gone out of the picture. This show was desperately and badly hurting for star power. You think about it, at WrestleMania 8, Sid Justice, Psycho Sid, main evented the show, and by the time you got to later on in 92, he's not even on Survivor Series. So the guy that main evented WrestleMania 8 wasn't even featured in a match on your Survivor Series show at all. And that says something. I mean, it was a tough time for the company. It was a tough time for the company. I'll put it to you that way. Even with some of the gimmick matches, Nightstick on a pole, it was just doo-doo. You have a coffin match with the Undertaker taking on Kamala, and that match, it's a coffin match. It goes like 4 or 5 minutes. That's terrible. It's just bad. This match in itself is memorable more so because of all the times that Kamala has referenced it over the years, talking about the discrepancy in payouts between Taker and himself, but that he still had a tremendous amount of respect for Taker and a lot of, business love for Taker, if you will. I the only thing that's really notable about this match is how much Kamala has talked about it over the years and the inherent racism and double standards within the pay structure of the WWE to their talents. So like I said, this is a show you can largely miss. Two matches you need to watch are Savage and Perfect versus Razor Ramon and Ric Flair, and then the title match, which I'll talk about in a moment. Savage and Perfect versus Razor Ramon and Ric Flair. Only complaint I have about this match, only thing I don't like about this match, is that it was so damn good, and then they went with the bullshit finish. I understand it's wrestling, and I understand it's not just like a sport or so on and so forth. And I understand that sometimes the bullshit finishes could really work. But sometimes bullshit isn't the way to go. And sometimes that bullshit finish could take away from what was an outstanding match. You look at the people involved in this match. You got the Macho Man Randy Savage, Mr. Perfect, Razor Ramon, Ric Flair. You know you're in for some good shit. This was a tag match in the middle of your fucking card. If you had that type of talent in a show, let's say 7 or 8 years after that, where that's the tag match and then you have the title match that you did, you would think the WWF would figure out a way to put enough other good stuff on the show where you'd be talking about it being a great all-time classic Survivor Series or if not, WWF pay-per-view. But maybe that was part of the problem, was you had Savage and Perfect versus Ramon and Flair, and they were in one match instead of two. Maybe the better thing to do at this point could have been doing Savage versus Ramon and Perfect versus Flair. If you're going to do singles matches, why not get two really damn good singles matches out of it instead of one really good tag match that was ruined by the crappy, overthought, overbooked to all fuck, losing control finish? You think about it, though. And I just literally thought about this as I was talking about it. This is sometimes why it's hard for somebody like me to be a professional wrestling fan. And I'm sorry if some of you thought this Survivor Series review series was just going to be me, going match by match by match by match. That's not always the case here. I've talked about every match pretty much on this show. But, I like to bring historical perspective, talk about things from a different angle, what have you. I want you to think about this for a second. Randy Savage, Mr. Perfect, both gone. It's Razor Ramon and Ric Flair that are still alive. Somehow Scott Hall is still alive, and that astounds me. And frankly, somehow Ric Flair is still alive, and that also astounds me. This is only 2 decades ago, 22 years ago. And one whole team is gone. Just think about that. Look at the opening match. Owen Hart, gone. Next match, Big Bossman, gone. Randy Savage, Mr. Perfect, gone. Earthquake, part of the natural disasters, gone. That's crazy. That's really crazy, isn't it? It's hard to be a wrestling fan sometimes because you get depressed. You think about all these guys that you grew up watching that aren't there anymore. It's kind of depressing me now and bringing down my mood a little bit just thinking about it. And I'm not just having my mood brought down because I have to talk about Survivor Series 1992. I mean, that's really sad. You know what's even sadder? Is that for a second there, as I was talking about it, I almost said that Razor Ramon was dead. He's not, Chico. He's still alive, yo. Know your role, jabroni. That's right, know your role, jabroni. But shit. Let me just think about that for a second. In that match, one whole team is no longer with us. 2 of the guys are no longer with us. And the 2 that are Scott Hall and Ric Flair. Life is a real kick in the seat. Really hard to figure out sometimes. And it just, like I said, it's really sad. Oh, I forgot Yoko is no longer with us. So think about that. Owen, Bossman, Savage, Perfect, Yoko, Earthquake. Andre, who wasn't even on this show. Ultimate Warrior, who wasn't on this show. Those are a lot of guys that I grew up watching. Many of those guys that I was a fan of over the years, and all gone. God damn, It really, truly is. Yeah, terrible. I'll tell you what wasn't terrible. Was the main event. Bret Hart versus Shawn Michaels for the WWF Championship. What I've never understood was why Vince had Bret win the title in Canada the way he did against Ric Flair. I never really understood why you wouldn't have Bret win the title at Survivor Series. I mean, if you really wanted to sit there and do something, why not have Bret Hart versus Ric Flair in the main event of Survivor Series 92? Have, freaking Razor Ramon versus somebody else. Then you could do Randy Savage versus Shawn Michaels. Could you imagine that in 1992? Savage versus Michaels? Holy shit. You wouldn't need Hogan on the card. You wouldn't need all those other guys that went with the company on the card. But this show desperately did. But man, this Bret Hart-Shawn Michaels match is definitely one of their best. It's a classic. It's really, really damn good. It's a shame that the match didn't have a lot of build-up to it. It's a shame that this match main evented and the WWF at the time, frankly, didn't seem to care all that much because they sure as hell didn't feature it like it really truly mattered. In fact, if I remember correctly, Bret Hart versus Shawn Michaels for the title main evented the show, but the promotional poster at the time featured Savage and Warrior, and then it was either Perfect or Ramon and Flair. And then it was Bossman and Nails. So if the promotional poster featured the fucking nightstick on a pole match, and goddamn Ultimate Warrior, who wasn't even with the company at the time, wasn't even on a goddamn show. And here's Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels busting ass, showing that they'll be the next generation of the company, showing what they can fucking do in the main event, and the WWF doesn't even promote it. They don't even build up to it. To me, I always thought this match was a bit off, just in the sense of I always thought it should have been Flair versus Bret here. If Flair was going to drop the title to Bret anyways, in the way that he did, why not just do it at the pay-per-view? I never got that. I never understood why the hell they did that. And I still don't think that makes any damn sense. And that was at a time where I don't think they really knew what they were going to do with Bret Hart as champion. And I don't think, frankly, he was ready to be champion. After this at the Rumble, who did he get? He got Razor Ramon, who couldn't even win his match here at Survivor Series. And then at WrestleMania 9, he takes on the Rumble winner, Yokozuna. But this match, really, really damn good. And Savage and Perfect versus Razor Ramon and Flair, again, really good until you get to the screwy finish. Those are two matches that I highly recommend you go back and watch. And that, if nothing else, makes this show passable. And I emphasize just passable. We've seen a lot worse shows with only one real quality match that have been viewed as passable over the years. At least this one had two. And they were split, one in the middle of the show and one that brought home and closed the show. Bret Hart versus Shawn Michaels. The chemistry these two guys had together was incredible. And this match between the two of them, frankly, was incredible. So, like I said, those two matches are worth going back and watching on the network. You can probably pretty much skip the rest, I'm just saying. Except if you're in the UK, because apparently you're not getting the network.